Bases dropped on Soccer's morning show. Soccer down here on a very wet here at Office HD. Very, very wet, sometimes thundery Thursday. That is not the hashtag. It's still Thursday Thoughts on a thundery Thursday. Even so, to where the rowdy dog has decided to not sleep upstairs. He just come down here to the office and he's hanging out. So that's how loud it is this morning. John, hear you there. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. And it is Major League Soccer. There's a lot of stuff there. Bam, good morning. And Bam is hanging out with us in the evening time. World number 30 drew 3-3 with the number 23 in the Asian Cup. Yeah. I mean, AFCON and the Asian Cup have been just nuts. Asian Cup you can catch here on Paramount Plus, and AFCON you can catch on the BNs, and you can get that on Fanatis here, fntz.co/soccer down here. And that helps out Fanatis with subscribers, helps out us because you're doing it with us. And so, you can get to keep up with AFCON and the Asia Cup. So, Bam, 1:05 in the morning on a public holiday Friday. So, Bam is hanging out with us halfway. Well, it's more than halfway. It's like 3/4 of the way around the world. So, Bam knows what's going to happen tomorrow already. And so, we'll get into all of that stuff. But there's some stuff in Europe that we have to get into. We have some goals from last night that we can show, that we can remind ourselves about with folks who are either with us but not with us, or folks that used to be with us who are no longer with us, if that makes any sense. News out of the Premier League as always, bans, all these kinds of things. But this morning, wanted to remind you on a couple of things. First and foremost, tonight. And no, I'm not. I am a fan of the Phil Collins Genesis, but no, that's not where this is going. Remember, Top Golf, Northwest Atlanta. It's the fundraiser for the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation. You get to hang out. 92.9 The Game will be there. Jason will be there. Jarrett will be there. I will be there. We're all just going to be messing around and trying to hit targets, or maybe try and sky a drive over the long net, or in mine and Jarrett's case, hit a pull hook and probably try to clear the net that way. So fundraiser, go to Jason's Facebook page. I've linked to it on mine. Flood Project, Georgia Revolution, name your social media. It's there. Be there tonight. I know the weather right now is pretty frightful, but remember, you have cover. So bring your clubs, or if you're right-handed, use the clubs that they have there. Know that the golf balls that they use are not meant for travel, and just have a good time there for a good cause. Like I said, 92.9 The Game will be there broadcasting live. We'll be there kind of hanging out, getting some sound. We'll air that in tomorrow's show. But no, it's going to be fun stuff tonight, and we all get to have fun with each other and ridicule me about my golf swing. But yeah, for the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation, the mini pitch in the Southern Crescent fundraiser tonight. You can be there, great. Pair up with your friends. Come on over. Like I said, I think teams, we said yesterday, teams will probably be a loose construct. And so we'll all be hanging out together for a great cause. Like I said, 92.9 The Game will be there. And it's from 7 to 10 is when the broadcast is. And so we'll have guests, and they'll have guests, and we'll be there, and we'll have fun. And, book 'em Dano Aloha. But yeah, if you have nothing else going on tonight, want to come hang out there, please do. Or if you're left-handed, bring your clubs. Like I said, I think my driver, yes, my chauffeur, as Del said yesterday, my driver is there from last time, because we had an event there in December, and I think I left my one wood, my driver. I think it's there because it was not in my golf bag when I went on vacation. So I think I left it there. I'll see if they have a lost and found, and see if I can reclaim my one wood. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, tonight, 7 o'clock, Top Golf, Northwest Atlanta, in the Chattahoochee Industrial District. And it's right off of Chattahoochee Industrial Boulevard. Can't miss it. So be there, have fun with all of us, and you get to hang out and talk stuff. Niko Moreno set to join us as always at 10:30, and we will go over everything in Niko's mind and anything else that is attached to what Niko has going on the planet. And it will be like I said, it'll be a bunch of news today when it comes to all of the. There's a lot of stuff, and there's plenty to discuss and talk about. Like I said, we got goals from last night. We'll get into those. Thiago Almada was playing for the Argentina U23s in the pre-Olympic tournament, and he had a moment. But Argentina, man, they got some work to do. And Brandon Vasquez got on the board last night for Monterrey in their game against Querétaro. So we'll be running those highlights at some point. We know they exist. I know they exist. And so we know they exist. It's all good. But no, very, very cool stuff from our friends last night at Tudene and from our friends at FS2. So we will be running that stuff coming up in short order. Opening kickoff this morning. And it was when you looked at it and you're going, really? I mean, legitimately, you're going, honestly, that this was something that did happen or almost happen. And for this, we go to Dallas. And when you look at the headline, when you look at the headline in Dallas, you're sitting there and you're going, really? It went that far. It went absolutely that far. And yeah, it did. So here's what happened yesterday. And Tommy Scoops, Tom Bogert was on top of this and a bunch of other folks. But here's what happened. And I'll go through the story, and I know that it might, bring a migraine to some folks. FC Dallas got a $13 million bid for Jesus Ferreira. And you're thinking, okay, fantastic. That's cool. That's great. 13 million bones for Jesus Ferreira. From Russian club Spartak Moscow. That, and I'm going to keep going. So this is the lead sentence. FC Dallas received a $13 million bid for Jesus Ferreira from Russian club Spartak Moscow. That would have been accepted. But the league has stepped in and told all parties that the potential deal will not move forward. Ferreira wanted to make the move and was in negotiations with Spartak over personal terms when the league communicated their decision to Dallas and Ferreira. The reasoning delivered to the club and player was that there are risks for American business entities doing business with Russian entities. That has got to be one of the biggest undersells of statements, sentences that I've seen in quite some time. You want to talk about undersell? The reasoning delivered to the club and player was that there are risks for American business entities doing business with Russian entities. MLS has the authority to nix the transfer because it's a single entity. Paperwork and transfers go through the league office. FC Dallas and MLS did not immediately provide comment. Bogart continues. Yes, Abby, belated happy birthday to Parky. We will definitely, next time we see him, we will wish him a happy birthday. Since the invasion of Ukraine, sporting entities worldwide have largely severed ties with the country. This includes FIFA and UEFA, both of which suspended Russia from international competition, UFN, until further notice 2 years ago. In October of last year, FIFA UEFA announced Russia's U17 boys and girls national teams could again participate in competitions. That hasn't gone over well. In the U.S., the U.S. Soccer Federation said in 22 that it would not play games against Russia. Among U.S. pro leagues, the NHL suspended all business relationships and sponsorships with Russian companies soon after the invasion, but the National Hockey League still has players who are in favor of the current government and the government structure. Spartak itself suffered from financial problems in the wake of the invasion, and in August of 22, all of the club and the stadium and the club assets were sold, morning Tom, were sold to Lukoil, L-U-K oil, whose co-founder, Leonid Fedun, previously owned the club. Not the first time that MLS has canceled a potential outgoing transfer since the invasion of Ukraine. In 22, MLS stepped in to halt a potential $5 million deal between Red Bulls and Lokomotiv Moscow for Christian Cassettes Jr. Eventually, he would go to Toulouse in a deal worth of north of $1 million if all performance-based incentives hit. There's been interest abroad in Ferreira, both in Europe and Mexico, but the offer from Spartak satisfied all parties. Would have been one of the most expensive outbound transfers in MLS history, but remember, Pepe was for $18 million plus $2 million, and Dallas has also created lucrative deals. I'm not going to say completed, because Brian Reynolds went to Roma, Reggie Cannon went to Boa Vista, but Boa Vista didn't pay. Tanner Tessman to Venezia. So Lukoil, for those who may not know, described as a Russian multinational energy corporation headquartered in Moscow, formed in 1991 when 3 state-run Siberian companies named after their respective towns, one with an L, one with a U, and one with a K, Longapas, Ure, and Kogalim, and added the word oil. So 3 cities came together, and then they created Lukoil. So you've got Cambridge Analytica that ran afoul of that exposed Lukoil for who they were, political targeting of American voters with representatives of Lukoil. You've got sanctions, you've got criticisms, all over the place. And Lukoil has ties to Sberbank, and Sberbank is not looked at kindly in the American political circles also. And so you have sanctions by the U.S. Treasury Department back in about a year ago against Sberbank, who is tied to Lukoil, who is tied to Spartak Moscow, who was tied to Jesus Ferreira, and was about to be this close to getting sold. That close to getting sold to Spartak Moscow. And when you see all of these things happen, all of these different, all of these different connections and combinations, I would love for FC Dallas to come publicly with a statement or an interview. Somebody interview FC Dallas, please. And ask FC Dallas what they were thinking. Current world situation being what it is. Yet you wanted to deal with Spartak Moscow. And if the research that we did here yesterday when all this was happening is right on, right now, when it comes to monetary transfers in and out of Russia, I don't think that they can use rubles to pay 13 million US. The current financial state of what that nation can do, what is available to them financially. I mean, literally, it would have to be, if our research was right here at SDH, it literally would have to be 13 million in gold bullion that would have to be moved from Spartak Moscow's coffers, whatever, wherever they are, whatever they are. They couldn't do it in their own. They couldn't do it in rubles. And Lord knows they ain't got U.S. dollars. It would have had to have been a $13 million transfer in gold bullion. So This could have been Michael, not yet. Miggy is still on the board moving to Saudi. Al Shabaab is keeping an eye on him. We'll check and see if there are any updates this morning. But literally, if Spartak Moscow was going to pay FC Dallas for Jesus Ferreira, even if this deal was going to be approved by the league office in New York City, it could not have been done by their own currency. They'd have to find 13 million in gold bullion, sit there and go, okay, we're going to find a transport plane. We're going to put Reacher on it. He's going to guard it, and he's going to bring it over here to the States. Like I said, I'd love to know why Dallas thought they could do this. And there are other teams that are doing things that are questionable that we'll get into in just a sec. But seriously, Jesus Ferreira, 13 million. Like I said, you read that sentence and you're sitting there going, morning, Harry. And you guys are bringing up some great points, and I'll circle back to them. But seriously, what was FC Dallas thinking? With the current status of the world and what's being fought. I mean, it's on the news every day. And FC Dallas, through intermediary or what have you, was pairing up Jesus Ferreira to go to Spartak Moscow. 13 million. Ferreira was for it. FC Dallas, yep, we got a deal. 13 million. Where to? Spartak Moscow. There should have been crickets in the room. Somebody should have raised their hand and gone like, yo, dog. Do you watch the nightly news? Do you see Richard Engel? What he's doing on a daily basis? Just checking. Literally, somebody in the room. I wonder if someone in the room raised their hand and was like, yo, fam, we might have an issue here. But it did not. Yes, they are under U.S. Treasury sanctions, Tom, as of about a year ago. I have the statement, and I'm trying to. Spare Bank is under sanctions as of a year ago, and Lukoil is as well. So, all right, let me get the Lukoil sanctions part here. Hang on, Lukoil sanctions USA. All right, so Spare Bank, who's tied to Lukoil, and back in September of 22. Late August of 22. And like I said, I'm going to the Justice Department and looking up these releases. Headline, August 31st of 22. U.S. obtains warrant for seizure of $45 million airplane owned by Lukoil. That's from the Office of Public Affairs of the Justice Department. When have we ever had a Justice Department? When have we ever had a Justice Department reference here on the show? I think this might be the first. And by the way, the Office of Foreign Assets Control has entity name Lukoil, OAO, on their sanctions list search. They have an email address and a website. They're on the sanctions list. They're on the Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctions list from the Department of the Treasury. Yet FC Dallas somehow, some way, got a $13 million transaction squared away for Jesus Ferreira with a club in a country who is banned in just about everything involving everything. And it got right to the edge of the cliff. And then MLS was like, bro, what? Why did MLS not know? I mean, obviously, this probably would have been kiboshed a lot sooner, but did MLS not know until the bitter end when they're tossing the paperwork? I mean, obviously, you're not sitting there and you're looking over everybody's shoulders. You're like, if you're MLS in New York, you're not sitting there and hovering over the shoulder of FC Dallas going, "Hey, what are you up to today?" I mean, you're not calling folks. "Hey, so how's it going down there in Dallas?" "Oh, yeah, we're great. We're about to sell one of our strikers." "Oh, cool. How much?" 13 million. "Okay, where?" "Spartak Moscow." Crickets. I I have questions. I've got questions. I really do. Uh, Hutch, good for MLS. Bam. Has MLS taken a page out of the A League where they told Perth Glory if a club comes in for a loan option, you must accept it? Don't know. Uh, Emilio with the sidebar, somewhat unrelated. That's why he asked about MLS and other leagues dealing with Saudi Arabia. Don't know. That one will be interesting. Tom, we do have that goal for Brandon Vasquez, and we'll be playing it later. Michael asking about Miguel Almiron. Let me check the updates, but as of right now, it is still most likely. Magic 8 Ball says most likely that Miguel Almiron will be leaving and heading to Al-Shabaab. Most likely, says the Magic 8 Ball. Okay. Earlier this morning, Miggy signed a new 3.5-year deal with Newcastle United. But Ben Jacobs, Newcastle still looking to bring in over 20 million pounds or 25 million euro before the transfer window shuts. And this is Ben Jacobs. Al-Shabaab have a verbal agreement for Miguel Almiron in excess of this number, but they haven't gone to the player side yet and have been given no encouragement to date that Almiron wants the move. Okay, that's in direct competition with other things that we've seen in the written word that Miggy was open to the move like earlier in the week. So is he open to the move? Is he not? We'll find out. Understood Newcastle are open to other offers involving Miggy. Callum Wilson being offered around, even though Newcastle insists he's not for sale. Atleti could not proceed due to Wilson's wages. And that is probably why you got Moise Kean on the loan deal from Juve for 500,000 euro as opposed to buying Thiago Almada. So if it's all about the purse strings right now for Atletico Madrid, that's why they went loan for Moise Kean and not picking up Thiago. Several Premier League clubs, including Chelsea, Manchester United, are aware there may be an opportunity around the 18 to 20 million pound mark, as Nazar Kinsella has put out there, the football correspondent for the Standard. Bayern's on the record saying that their pursuit of Kieran Trippier is over, having seen their latest 15 million euro bid rejected. Bayern's under the impression there's 25 million necessary to force a sale. Newcastle insists no price has ever been quoted. Kieran Trippier to me seems like one of those elements where you make it difficult for anybody. You say he's kind of, if the offer's right, he's out there. We're not selling him, but if the number's right, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. How'd you do? It's there, but if it ain't there, then Newcastle's not going to sit there and go, well, But Miggy signed a new 3-year deal, 3.5-year deal, as of about 6:30 our time this morning. So Miggy's on the board, and now according to the 4-letter paper in the overnight, Miggy told Newcastle he doesn't want to leave. Remember what we saw yesterday on his significant other's Instagram. They were on vacation, plans changed, so they had to head back. So Miggy has apparently told, according to the 4-letter paper, Newcastle he doesn't want to leave. So that's where we are with Miggy. So Miggy has gone from being open to a move to wanting to stay to now having signed a new 3.5-year deal. From Lee Ryder at the Newcastle Chronicle. And Lee is, Lee was one of the guys that we followed when all of this stuff with Miggy initially was going back and forth. Linked with Al-Shabaab, talk of a 30 million pound bid. 29-year-old less than a year into a newly penned deal. Young family believed Almiron and his family are not open to a move this month. So we've gone from being cool with it to not. Also believed Almiron's agent, Daniel Campos, has not been consulted about a sale to the club in the Middle East or been involved in the discussions to sell the South American ace. Like I said, that's Lee Ryder's terms. And once again, Almiron, Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson, all linked. And I didn't know if you knew this, but Lee Ryder says that Almiron has a great rapport with CEO Darren Eales from their time that they worked together. Eales said last season, great guy to have around, just one of a squad of players that are all working their hardest. Little son born into a life of black and white and has been a mascot in the Premier League. I don't know if Miguel Almiron ever used the word bloke. Speaking to, okay, so he had an interview with Lee Ryder. Speaking to the Chronicle about life on Tyneside, he says, to be honest, I'm a pretty quiet, reserved as a bloke, really. I don't think he's ever used the word bloke, but okay. Not one for having big nights out or parties, just enjoy spending time with my family. For a footballer, it's always really good when you're settled at home. So, Miggy apparently might have been interested, but now he's not. Newcastle has signed him to a new deal just months into having signed him to a deal. So Miggy, 3.5-year deal with Newcastle does not look like that is going to go down. And Tom, when it comes to Russia, yeah, you don't. Tom's like, we don't want to get to any other players grinered. And David, this is the thing. This is the thing, David. How did this get so far down the road before MLS said, no? Like I said, I don't think that you have folks kind of hovering over shoulders and everything on a daily basis. Yes, I know you're single entity, but I don't think you're sitting there and you're ringing up folks, although they should. We're going to talk about things in Minnesota and LA coming up in a bit. And yeah, we'll get into those. But how does this get to the point of paper heading to New York? New York looks at it and goes, no. How do you not know in these? Well, I mean, like I said, how do you not know in these conversations? You're in the league office up in New York. Dallas is burning the phone lines to Moscow, apparently. How's that going to appear on the phone bill? Rich, Man City and NYC called the league and said they'll only work with one oil producer, themselves. Rich, the Hunt's only idea was simply what their only idea is. Winning doesn't matter. Just sell the player. Yeah. Harry, I get chasing the bag, but from Jesus's camp and FC Dallas's camp should have been a no from the start. And yeah, Emilio, they are. All you got to do is look at what the governor's doing to let you know how things might be politically. Harry, Luke Oil have been targeted by EU sanctions. The company's been under U.S. sanctions since 2014 per Politico.eu. Rich, 100% no one in MLS HQ cared or noticed the deal until someone outside of them told they couldn't let it happen, had to get involved. Dell, congratulations on yes. You may as well just lock into Paramount Plus for the Asian Cup. And Hutch, dealing with Russia and Saudi Arabia will not end well with anyone. And Dell, that is true. Use the Russian bid to get another team to come in for him. Hey, Spartak Moscow wanted to pay 13. Yeah, it would have had to have been in gold bullion, but yeah, they wanted to pay 13. So you've set your market for Jesus Ferreira. Somebody can come in and sit there and go, yeah, we'll pay 13. Tom, Thursday thought for Tom out of the blogs. Free Bartosage 99. I mean, I'd love to see him wear it. I don't know what the specs are in Major League Soccer for wearing jersey numbers. But yeah, he wore 99 at Legia Warsaw. Here he's wearing 6. And we've seen Bartosz and we've seen Bartok. Bartok is it was in the Discord last night. It might be a club rule, but like I said, I don't know off the top of my head. It might be a club rule where everybody's wearing numbers that are supposed to be, what they're, 0 to 30. residential driving zones attached to numbers. It might be a club rule. But yeah, Bartok, we've seen Bartok and we've seen Bartosz. Bartok is BWP wore 99 for Red Bull. David's right. But like I said, it might be a club thing. Don't know. But yeah, you see Bartok and you see Bartosz. Bartok is the diminutive of Bartosz. So that's where that is. That came up in the Discord last night, and I had to do a little digging. But yeah, Bartok is the diminutive of Bartosz. So you'll see both. So that was my opening thought this morning, was on Jesus Ferreira. And it doesn't get any better. And I know that Minnesota United's a punching bag. I know they're a punching bag because they should be a punching bag. Yesterday, Andy Greeter and Tommy Scoops had the note that Minnesota United is going to pay Phoenix Rising a transfer fee of up to $200,000 plus performance-based add-ons for Carlos Harvey out of Phoenix Rising. I mean, that's a great piece of business for Phoenix Rising. And so Carlos Harvey goes from Phoenix to Minnesota, defensive midfielder. And the thing about Carlos Harvey, if you look him up on Transfermarkt, Carlos Harvey has a value of less than the transfer fee. His market value is listed at 175,000 euro. But somewhere down the line, Minnesota United thought about knocking on the door of Phoenix Rising and going, we'd like to have your defensive midfielder, Carlos Harvey. Sure. What's it up? What's it worth to you? Minnesota United says, okay, how about $200,000? And we'll give you some performance-based, incentives and things like that. Spend time as a center back, a D mid, and a center mid. So he's been up the middle of the park. Last year for Phoenix, in all competitions, 36 appearances, 7 goals, 5 assists as a defensive midfielder for a team that won it all. 19 matches before that. He was with LA Galaxy, played, I'm going backward here, 1, 10, 11 matches in the LA Galaxy first team. Then he was with Los Dos before that. But Minnesota United decided they wanted to pay $200,000 plus performance-based add-ons for Carlos Harvey. Okay, fine. You don't have your chief soccer officer yet, do you? Khalid Al-Ahmad is still overseas. He was supposed to report earlier this week. No word from Andy Greeter or anybody else up in the Twin Cities if Khalid Al-Ahmad has actually even been on this side of the Atlantic. Signed Harvey to a 2-year deal, 24-25, club option for 26. Has some time on the Panamanian national team. But still, Khalid Al-Ahmad is not on this side of the Atlantic by all indications. He was still supposed to be last week. He was supposed to be this week while they're out in Arizona. But he's not. And so you now have you have a team that is paying above market value for individuals, and your chief soccer officer isn't there, and he doesn't want to catch up with his Bam, thanks for hanging out with us until 20 of 2 in the morning your time. Uh, you still have a chief soccer officer who's not on this side of the Atlantic. And you still have a chief soccer officer who apparently doesn't want to interact with his players until he's there in front of them. And you are less than a month, or let's say a month. You're a month away from the season starting. And you're on your second interim head coach this calendar year. Your chief soccer officer does not exist yet. Maybe he's the Jonathan Tuttle of chief soccer officers. That's your MASH reference for today, kids. Check the Google machine. Maybe Khalil Ahmad is Jonathan Tuttle. He's the Jonathan Tuttle of chief soccer officers. Does he actually even exist? Might have been the best damn OD Minnesota United's ever had. We don't know. But you want to pay over market value. Transfermarkt's got him at $175. You pay $200,000 plus performance-based incentives for a defensive midfielder that you apparently really had to have. You really had to have Carlos Harvey. You really had to have Carlos Harvey. So you got Carlos Harvey. Congratulations. And I'm counting. All right, so you got 26 guys. Okay, so you're not doing too bad. You got 26 guys on your roster. Now one of them is Carlos Harvey. Congratulations, Minnesota. You still don't have a chief soccer officer. The other team that I wanted to get into, and obviously we'll discuss what's going on out west with Niko when he comes up at 10:30, is you have LAFC. LAFC, I don't know what's going on with LAFC. I really don't. But apparently yesterday, they decided that they were going to send Steve Buke to La Liga. They have currently, they literally have currently 18 players on their roster. Literally 18 players on their roster. And it looks like Steve Buke is heading to Real Valladolid. He was a $6 million purchase, and he looks like he's heading out the door. You thought Minnesota United's situation was odd? LAFC's is even more so. LAFC has waived or gotten rid of 3 dudes, and they have 18 players on their roster, literally. And Hugo Lloris isn't even on the roster as it's listed in Transfermarkt yet. So if we were to add a player that is not currently rostered, according to our friends at Transfermarkt, you got 18 players. 18. That sounds like something very Bob Bradley-esque. Romero, Long, Murillo, Segura, Delavalle, who's a recent pickup. Hollingshead, Palencia, Ilie, Krastev, who's gotten waived. So that takes you back to 8. Tillman, Duenas, Bogish, Buanga, Buke, who's out the door, Darbo, Oliveira, and Ordaz. That's technically 15. And Denny Buanga wants out. You've got 16 players right now. Seriously, you do. You've got a month before the season. Buke, left winger, gone. Krastev, central midfielder, leaving. And literally, you look at this roster and you're going, how many of you are there? The answer is not a lot. So I don't know what's going on at LAFC either. I have no idea. But we'll catch up with Niko coming up at 10:30 and ask him about all these kinds of stuff. By the way, We mentioned what's going on in Russia. Fabrizio Romano, a verbal agreement has been reached for Manfred Ugalde to join Spartak Moscow from FC Twente. 15 million euro package will make it a club record sale. 4.5-year contract agreed with the Russian club revealed days ago. I'd like to know how Twente is going to get paid. Maybe they can get away with some kind of wire transfer. I don't know. I have no idea. No freaking clue. But apparently, yes, sir. The Russian clubs are sitting there and they're just winding up. Hey, we're in our window. So we're going to go ahead and just keep shelling out money, allegedly, for folks. This sounds like a fantastic idea. Hey, let's drop 12 or 13, million bucks on a dude. West Ham and Chelsea, by the way, have been offered a chance to sign Callum Wilson, according to our friends at TalkSport. But I don't know what's going on at LAFC. I don't know what's going on at Minnesota United. I literally don't. Like I said, we'll catch up with Niko and find out because they had a big press conference yesterday. De La Vega now officially in the fold. And so we'll catch up with Niko about everything going on in the Western Conference. And maybe Niko has an idea as to what in the wide world of sports is going on. And Atlanta should have offered Sosa and Ibarra Hasetsu's agent should also be on the phone with him. I mean, you and I, Amelia, we're always going to disagree about Hasetsu. I know we are. And I know that I'm going to disagree with folks about Hasetsu. But, yeah, Mateus, I don't think has a home yet. Sosa is at Racing. That is officially official. And Ibarra is on loan at Rosario Central. So we'll keep an eye on all those guys and see what's going on. But look at it this way. As an Atlanta United fan, more questions for more teams than yours. And that's a good thing heading into Birmingham. Tomorrow we'll go over what everybody is thinking, expectations, all these kinds of things when it comes to Birmingham. Weather is supposed to be like profoundly crappy with Atlanta United and Birmingham Legion. But a reminder that if you're going, don't forget that after the match is over in Birmingham, that you can head over to Ghost Train Brewing, First Ave South, Suite 101B. It's right there on the side of the road. You can't miss it. Ghost Train Brewing starting at 6 Eastern, 5 Central. I'll be there. Jason will be there. Supporters groups will be there. I think Kaylor Hodges from the USL show is going to be there. So we'll go over the match if we've wrung ourselves out from the crappy weather conditions that are going to be anticipated. So if you're going, it's going to be great to see you. It's the beginning of another season and following Atlanta United. But afterward, stop by Ghost Train Brewing. We're going to be live at Ghost Train. We'll be there kicking off at 5 o'clock Central Time. So 6 Eastern, 5 Central, Ghost Train Brewing. Me, Maddie, Jason, Kaylor Hodges. We'll be talking about what happened in the match. If our pieces of paper haven't, had all the ink run all of them off and all of our notes go away. What you remember about the match, what you're looking forward to with the season, catching up hopefully with some of our friends from Birmingham Legion as well about their season in the USL Championship. So very, very busy time, and it'll be great to see everybody in Birmingham. Ghost Train Brewing. We've done stuff from Ghost Train before. We're going back. Post-game show and hanging out with all of you folks at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Central Time. That's when it's going to start on Saturday after the match is over. So after the match, make your way over to Ghost Train. Come hang out, and it'll be a fun time for all of us. It'll be great to catch up with a lot of folks and see everybody and all those kinds of things. But once again, reminder, tonight, starting at around 7, it's going to be at Top Golf Northwest Atlanta, the fundraiser for the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation building the mini pitch on the south side, so kids can have the experience of hanging out and doing a bunch of stuff and just enjoying the game. All right. This gives me the chance to get some liquid in my system. We had a couple of moments last night, and Tom brought it up, and we're gonna play some goals here. We're gonna play some goals. Last night it was the first opportunity for Brandon. One of the first opportunities for Brandon Vasquez to show what he was worth in the transaction with FC Cincinnati. He certainly did all of that. This is courtesy of our friends at 2DNA. Brandon Vasquez going up against Querétaro for Monterrey.
Tres se mantienen dentro del área. El Corcho que también se muestra para que le toquen el balón. Jordi retrasa el esférico con Gobea. Todo lo trata de cubrir ahí. El cuadro queretano cuando viene el servicio, el remate y el gol. ¡Gol! De Brandon Vázquez. Así es como se estrena. Así es como dice, voy a ser el hombre que en el área pueda aprovechar las oportunidades en los servicios. El balón que le llega a zona más que efectiva para el contacto, Rafa. Y ahora sí se aprovecha la oportunidad. En el 1-0 en este partido, Brandon Vázquez hace el primero para Rayado.
There you go. First goal for Brandon Vasquez on the board for Monterrey. Nick hopping in on a Thursday. What's on your mind, sir?
I don't know, man. I got a free moment. I figured I would jump in.
Okay. Well,
good for Brandon Vasquez.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear that for Brandon getting on the board for Monterrey. We spent the majority of the first hour discussing Jesus Ferreira.
Yeah.
And Spartak Moscow and what is going on at Minnesota, or what's not going on at Minnesota, and what is certainly not what's going on at LAFC. Obviously, we'll catch up with Niko and get his thoughts about what's going on in MLS coming up at 10:30. But Jesus Ferreira and Spartak Moscow, brother.
Well, I'm not going to get into the heavy components of it. Largely because I don't think I legally can, but right. I've been a part of, and this is pre Russia-Ukraine war. I have been a part of some conversations with Russian businesses, and it was made very clear to us that because of the nature of the sanctions around Russian political apparatus and Russian corporations, that the only way you can really facilitate any payment between a U.S. entity and a Russian entity is gold bullion.
Yeah, mention that, yeah.
And so that is one that's already problematic there from that. You know, it's not exactly easy to get your hands on gold bullion, one. And then two, after the Brittany Griner situation, why on God's green earth would any agent put their client in a position to go to Russia is beyond me. Like, I understand everyone wants their money.
Yeah.
Right. I get it. The money starts talking and then the eyeballs start rolling back and it's like a shark, you know. I can feel, Quint sitting there. It's like a black eyes, like a doll's eyes, you know, like, I mean, you can, when the money starts talking, that happens, but really, that's the main issue here is one, the ability to do business with a Russian entity is pretty much barred at this point. And then two, if your client gets into any sort of trouble over there, we know what's going to happen. Why would you suggest that your client, make that kind of move is beyond me.
Yeah. FC20 though, they're more than happy to send their dudes over. So that came out this morning.
Yeah. Good luck to them.
Yes. There was another story that I wanted to, and I'm glad that you're on because it was a serious story and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. From our friends at the Agence France Presse. Udinese have appealed against being forced to play one match behind closed doors as punishment for fans racially abusing Mikey Maignan last weekend. The Serie A club, who have since banned 5 fans for life, once again, this is the words from the AFP, were hit with the sanction after Maignan was repeatedly racially abused in the first half of Saturday's 3-2 defeat to AC Milan. Udinese CEO Franco Collavino, in a statement released on Wednesday night, "We reflected for a large part of the day whether or not to present an appeal. Having looked at the documents, however, we realized that we had to act to protect the reputation of our club, which has historically been multi-ethnic, and the efforts we have made to go after the perpetrators," end quote. Collavino also said the punishment handed down by Serie A was unfair due to the small number of people who abused Maignan, in contrast to other episodes in Italy, which have involved thousands of supporters. Quote, "We want to defend our supporters who've been unfairly treated by a ruling that punishes an entire fan base for the appalling actions of a small number of people," added Collavino. Saturday was not the first time Maignan has been racially abused by supporters in Italy after he was targeted by a Juve fan in September of 21. On Sunday, the 28-year-old challenged Italy's football authorities on Sunday, saying that, quote, "If you do nothing, you will also be complicit." Italy, a country governed by a coalition led by the far-right Brothers of Italy parties, rife with fascist football fan groups. Once again, this is words of Agence France Presse. In particular, among the hardcore ultras who make most of the atmosphere at stadia. So Udinese is appealing their ban, sir.
One, AFP's reporting is correct. There's no getting around what you're. The fact that that Giorgio Meloni and the Fratelli d'Italia political movement is, there's a lot of well-masked fascists.
Mm-hmm.
They do quite the job of trying to blend into the greater politic, except at times they peek their ugly heads out, and it shows up in odd ways. One of the odd ways that it does show up is the support of the ultras. So there are like a great many European clubs, supporter groups that cater to some of the more baser instincts of their collective, and that is that you have some that are very left wing, you have some that are very right wing, and you have some that are just kind of regular run of the mill nut jobs. And in this case, the hyper right wing, the fascists they have no problem calling themselves fascists. They have no problems demanding the ethnic purity of Italy. I can't speak for any of the other groups that are out there in Europe. I'm not going to put anything on them. I can only talk about the stuff that directly concerns me, and that would be the Italian ultras and how that gets broken down. Money talks. The reason why I talk about the left and right wing supporters and the numbers and how that works is because that is votes, that's money, and that money feeds the political machine, which is why you don't see Curva Nord, getting hammered for the racist abuse. You see the Curva shut down, but you don't see like, okay, enter, you're not going to have any. Zero supporters in there, right? Okay, interesting. Juve, same thing. Nope. We're going to kick the ultras out of the curva, but we're not going to, we're not going to enforce a, behind closed doors match. Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Udinese. It was more than 5 fans. Let's be very clear. One.
Yeah.
More than 5 fans. 5 fans aren't making that kind of noise. And if they are, then,
they're loud, brother.
They're very it's like a 5-man Iron Maiden show with but Udinese gets hammered. Why? Because there's not a lot of political clout there, and so it's easier to hammer those with very little political clout. And to Udinese's point, that's very valid. They said, look, man, this has been happening all over Italy. Why are we getting hammered? Well, congratulations, because you're the low man on the totem pole. And that when you have that, that means that you are going to be put in the crosshairs, because it's easier for them to hang you out to dry as the patsy than to have the higher ups handled. And this is something that's going to have to, there's a part of me that's like, okay, great. We demanded action. There's action. Right. But then another part of me is like, well, going forward, we have a precedent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if this happens at Inter, at Juve, at Milan, Lazio, Roma, it doesn't matter. Now it's very clear behind closed doors. The ownership, this directly hits the ownership because the TV deal is so terrible. They don't make a ton of cash off the TV deal. They make more money off butts and seats. And so if you make the team have to pay out appearance fees, players, if you make them have to pay out, the salaries, and there's no butts and seats it's very thin margins to begin with. So this is a direct punch at the business operations of a team. So I wanted action. I got action, but now I want to see the same rules handed out for even the big boys, right? Don't let the elite get by with their own set of rules. Please make sure that the rules are enforced across the board, because Italy is very good at punishing those who are with less political clout. A little different when it comes to those with with cash and political backing. So yeah, Udinese, I think they're getting what they deserve, but now we need to make sure it's even.
Well, and we're seeing that with the administration of FFP in England, where Manchester City is more than happy to gum up the works with lawyers and billable hours,
Right.
where Tom and Ropes and all of our other fellow Evertonians are staring at things, and Nottingham Forest and they're looking at them, and you have points deductions for Everton, and Manchester City's the same way. So we're seeing it in all of the leagues. It's coming across in different topics, but you still have the quote unquote haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots are the ones that are getting pounded in whatever the situation is in your league of choice.
Yeah. Is Milan still the highest profile team that's been hit with FFP? I want to say.
Well, I would say, yeah, I would say so right now across the board in Europe. Yeah, I would say so
across the board. Yeah. So, and out of all of those high profile teams, Milan at the time was essentially the one with the least amount of capital behind them. It is FFP is in its form now. In its original form, it was supposed to be the great equalizer. In its current form now, and this is because the big clubs, they drew a line in the sand and said, well, it needs to start out at a certain point, right? Like you can't come after us now, or you can't come after us, for whatever. We need that sort of kind of the guardrails up. And so the big clubs are protected. The big clubs they have more mechanisms at their control because they are nation state owned, because they are, a part of a conglomerate, so they can do the financial shell game. The rules are written clearly. However, there's enough legal ambiguity to allow a massive legal team like that of City to really, and I think you said it perfectly, gum up the works and make it to where it's so problematic to go after one of the big boys that you just say, all right, guys, look, just please keep it at a reasonable level. Okay. We don't want to, it's again, that's why I say, look, it's time. Give them Super League just to let them go and spend stupid. I say the same thing for college football, right? If the Big Ten and the SEC want to go and have a free-for-all with cash and money and whatever. And if any of these other, like anything like Big 12, I guess, if they want to join in, the Tola region,
Sure.
if they want to go ahead and jump in on that, go for it. And then break off, do your own thing, be NFL light, and let the, Fresno States of the world and let the, Sam Houston States and the Georgia Techs and the UNC and Wake Forest and everybody else do their own thing. I mean, it's because there's no way that you're going to be able to financially keep up with them. And to do so is folly, right? You're just going to burn yourself to the ground. So if they want to have special rules and they want to be stupid with their money, let them go be stupid with their money.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you're spot on. And
historically, but Tom, historically and financially,
yeah,
two very different things, right?
I mean, Everton, what, Tom, 1876, I think is Everton. I think if memory serves. So yes, in a historic sense, they are the oldest, longest tenured club that is to be punished in PSR FFP. So, I mean, it's like I said, it depends on what your metric is. But Nick, to your point, basically, this sounds like the old Saturday Night Live sketch with the steroid Olympics,
right?
Where you got all 1878. Thank you, Tom. Where you have the guys that are just like the Russian athletes, and they're going to be doing deadlift, and I forget who it was. I think it was Phil Hartman, who had the character who had the arms basically fall off in lifting the deadlift or something like that. So
right.
Your Super League would be the financial equivalent of the steroid Olympics.
Well, yeah, and that's what what's my thing is really, how do you stop it? You can't.
No.
I mean, you can only keep up the legal evasive maneuvers for so long. I mean, you only can, right? Only for so long. You're not going to be able to. There are clubs like Barcelona that need it desperately. You have Real Madrid, who's just in a different stratosphere altogether. Juventus pretends that they are there. Juventus is essentially the former rich person who still lives in the hollowed out mansion, with the car, like the sweet old car in the driveway that doesn't work. It just looks nice.
So what, like Grey Gardens or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, I thought you were kind of living opulently, and there's a lot of cobwebs around here, man.
Mm-hmm.
So there are clubs that need it. There are clubs that want it because they understand their role in the world is just different than the Evertons of the world. Then it's different than, than there's Everton, Feyenoord. I'll put Milan in that category now. We're not. We were a giant. We're not anymore.
Ajax.
Ajax. I think the Eredivisie in general is there.
Yeah.
You need the Ajax brand. Mm-hmm. Like the brand name, I think has more value than the club itself, than the players and everything else. The history of Ajax is probably more valuable to an entity than what the current on-field product is, right? And it's the same thing with Milan, right? Seven Champions League titles. That history is more valuable than the current club, right? Than the current state of play. So they're going to want to be a part of that. I would prefer them not to be, but whatever, have fun. But I think it's the only way forward for like the Fiorentinas of the world, I'll say the Tottenham Hotspurs of the world,
right?
The Milans of the world. It is the only way forward, and is to allow these super big guys to just break away and go do their thing. It's just, there's no, it's at that point now with the special rules. And the reason why I say break away is because if they break away, the political machine that in some countries is interwoven with this now has to deal with a new reality where the money is so stupid, so high that the rest of the league can be cleaned up because you don't have the shield of the political machine above it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Italy, you wouldn't have Juve, Inter, Milan really pulling the strings on the rest of the league. They would break away and do their own thing, which means that Serie A could then say, okay, here's our new rules going forward. There's going to be financial responsibility. There's going to be clear, hard rules, especially when it comes to dealing with things like racism, dealing with things that for too long the dinosaurs have kept us from dealing with. Now we're going to deal with them head on. I think that it would allow leagues like the Bundesliga to really reinvest in the health of its league and say, okay, we've got, and Bundesliga is not going to let Bayern go. Let's just be honest. But if it were to happen, it's almost like when a forest fire comes through and burns out some of the old growth, and now new growth can come in its place. Right. And that's what I think is needed in club football right now, because you have too much political clout, too centralized, with too much money to allow any meaningful change to take place, to allow those rules to be spread out evenly across the board.
All right, so then let me ask you this. We're talking about what's going on with the punishment. And if you're Udinese, you're obviously hot under the collar because you need butts and seats. If you were, and this doesn't have to be across the board, and this is my Pollyanna question for you this morning. Niko's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
My Pollyanna question for you is, how do you handle stupidity down here? Specifically, like we're talking about with Mikey Magnon and idiots, that small number of idiots that were yelling at Mikey Magnon, which is, quoting Sherman T. Potter, horse hockey. If you were in charge of discipline, if you were the czar of discipline in these situations, what would you do to make sure this was curbed? Because stopping it is, that's, throwing, you're trying to dig yourself out of a beachhead with a spoon. How would you slow it down? How would you enforce rules of engagement to where this stops and or slows? Because in Italy, we're seeing what the punishment is, and you're hoping that that's across the board. In Mexico, it is a weapon against your national team or against the team, your local squad, where if you're mad at them, then you're using it as a weapon against your team and against yourself. The fans don't quite realize that, and you're just kind of like, all right, fine, you want to do that and be an idiot, go there and be an idiot. But for the greater picture, how would you slow things down? How would you curb all of this stupidity? Or am I just holding on to the lamppost like Roker and the Hurricane here?
You're holding on to the lamppost.
Okay.
The issue is not, and this is what nobody wants to hear because it's too depressing. And that the issue is not the clubs, the issue is not the players, the issue is us. The issue is the fans. The fans are the problem. We have, for too long, demanded a passionate crowd at any price because we demand an atmosphere, right? We demand an atmosphere, and we will get that atmosphere by any means necessary. And so, when you're cutting a highlight, John, and this is for those, this is kind of a loose film / sports entertainment thing. When you cut a highlight, you get what's called a melt, right? A melt it has just nat sound that is picked up by the microphones around a stadium. And it is a very, very rough cut of just general plays of the game, right? And the editor will go in and select like 2 to 3 seconds from like this 10-minute melt that gets sent through.
Correct.
And we, based off of seeing 2 seconds, will generate an opinion on something, right? Like we as the viewers of this highlight will say, man, I want that. And it's people with like flares jumping up and down, wow, that's so amazing. But what you're missing is everything else that I cut out of that clip.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing everything else. Any profanities that were being hurled at the players, darts, objects, things that were happening during that game. You at home missed that because I don't let you see it.
Yeah.
Right. So we for so long have demanded that 2-second bit of joy of the flares jumping up and down and everything else that we ignore everything else that goes along with it.
Right.
And we are back to the bread and circus. We're back to the Coliseum again. And we are becoming a society that needs the Coliseum. We need it because the rest of our lives are we feel trapped by this sort of machine around us that we need the circus. And that's why there's no political will to do anything about what's happening. Yeah, like in Italy, there's no political will to deal with this. So a couple of things can happen. One, if you are a player, right, who is not Italian, whether you're Black, whether you are Latino, exactly, Hutcho, bread and circuses did not end well for the Romans. That's the whole point of this thing, is that it doesn't end well. And, if I were the czar of the punishment machine, I would be out of a job very quickly because I would say, great, you're relegated. What? You're relegated. You're out.
Mm-hmm.
You're gone. And I would be pushed out of my position very quickly because you have to remove the infection.
Yeah.
You have to remove the infection. And if somebody wants to weaponize racism, we don't need them in in our money-making apparatus, because I'm not talking about removing them from society. You can't remove them from society. They're a part of society. You have to deal with it. But I can remove them from our money-making venture, because that's all this big-time sports world is now. It's just money.
It's big business.
It's not a club. Milan is owned by Redbird, right? Which is
now.
what? It's a conglomerate.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah. Juve is ran by who? Exor,
mm-hmm.
right? It's a conglomerate. Man City is ran by who? Right? Liverpool ran by who? Man United ran by who? And so it's all it's conglomerates. It's publicly traded stocks. The days of, well, my club is a bunch of longshoremen. Ha ha ha. Those days are done, man. So if it's a company and we accept it's a company, then treat it like a company. So if I have a member of my board of directors who's chronically screwing up, I'm removing them from the board. Well, you can't get, this is, I'm not canceling you from society. I am canceling you from your job, but I'm not canceling you from society. I just don't want you a part of my money-making venture anymore. And that's how I would treat it. I'd remove them. So if it was like Santos Laguna,
mm-hmm.
if it was, Cruz Azul, if it was Milan, Inter, whoever, you're getting relegated. You're out. Go be broke. Go support your broke team. And when they bleed away, maybe something new and better can take their space.
Deloitte came out with their football money list. Speaking of money and business and power and influence. Highest revenue in 22-23. Who do you think it was internationally?
Highest revenue?
Highest revenue.
Where they make their money.
Mm-hmm.
They made their money. I would say probably Real Madrid made their money.
Ding, ding, ding. Very nice.
Hey, there you go.
831 million euro.
Yeah.
Manchester City number 2
mm-hmm.
at just under 826. PSG at 801, almost 802. Barcelona with all of their issues, and I probably should just say issues. Barcelona at 800 million euro. Manchester United, who led as close as 2017. They're fifth in revenue. Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, Juve, Dortmund, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Atleti, Eintracht Frankfurt, Newcastle, West Ham, Napoli, and Marseille. That's your Deloitte Football Money League for 22-23. All of those. Only 8 Premier League clubs included in the top 20. 11 last year. Biggest financial gains all made by European clubs. Napoli up 71%. AC Milan up 50%. Eintracht Frankfurt up 41%. Largely their revenues going up because of progress made in European competitions.
Mm-hmm. I think that sort of the great market correction for 2024 is going to be like we saw this with Man United's new director that they appointed.
Yep.
Where he said, look, we're not going to let players just languish on the bench anymore. Like either you're performing or you're out. We have to sort of hold a standard here.
Right.
I think that was something that really screwed up the market for a number of years, where you had like Man United signing players for like 50, 60 million pounds and then sticking them on the bench. You had Barcelona signing players for like 80 million, sticking them on the bench. You had PSG doing the same thing. A lot of these big boys and we're taking these very expensive transfers and bringing them in, expecting them to start. They didn't start, so they just set them on the bench. And, at some point I think you have to start being a bit wiser with your transfer strategies, just to keep the legal heat off of you. Right. Yeah. I mean, just to keep the heat off. So I think that you're going to see a correction in 2024, which is you're going to see lower transfer fees with more heavily scouted, heavily scrutinized transfers than you will have had for probably the past decade.
Viva Analytics, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It is going to be more analytics driven. It is going to be more of a numbers game than it is anything in the past, and that's because before it was win trophies, right? Then it was remain solvent. Then now it's like create margin.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to make sure our operating costs are low, our revenue is high, and we make the gap between our operating costs be like not just the floor, but the basement, and our revenues be a skyscraper, right? The top of the skyscraper. We want to make it that much of a gap between our margin, right? Now, is that realistic? No. Is it feasible? No. Are they going to try for it anyway? Yes. So that's what you're going to see, and I think that's where 2024 is going. That will depress transfer fees globally, because the people who were previously driving the market on this are now going to say, no, we're not spending 50 million on that guy. We're spending 25 million on that guy. Like, okay, well, and the clubs who are like, nope, we're drawing a line in the sand. We're not going to go 1 penny less than 35 million. They're like, okay, then you're stuck with them. Okay, 15. You know, so it's you're going to discover who's 10 toes down very quickly.
3 to 4 million. No, 90.
Yes.
Tim Bridge, lead partner in Deloitte Sports Business Group, sees a changing pattern. Quote, a high demand for live sport is pointing towards further growth for commercial and match day revenues in particular, as clubs appear to no longer be able to rely on exponential broadcast revenue growth. Creating a more commercially focused business model will support them to achieve greater control over their financial stability. This may include developing new merchandise or non-match day events, such as concerts, to create new commercial offerings. In the coming seasons, European clubs may look to further diversify their revenues to gain control over a larger proportion of their total revenue.
Look at Liverpool. Let's look at Liverpool and Arsenal.
Okay. Commercial revenue, Liverpool, 298 million euro. They were 7th in the list for commercial revenue on the Deloitte list.
Mm-hmm.
Broadcast revenue, Arsenal was 9th. Liverpool was 3rd. Match day revenue, Arsenal and Liverpool were 7 and 8. Liverpool had 103 million euro. Arsenal had 118. And how the top 20 made their money. So Liverpool overall was 7. Arsenal was 10 in this listing.
Right. Well, who owns those clubs?
Let's see. Liverpool is
Fenway, right?
Yeah, Fenway. Yeah, Fenway. Liverpool. LeBron. Yeah, so it's Fenway. The FSG, Fenway Sports Group.
Yeah, and so then you have Kroenke at Arsenal, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Kroenke's an NFL guy. You know, look at the Glazers.
He ain't an MLS guy, that's for sure.
Right. Well, the Glazers NFL guys, right?
Yes, 75% of them, yes, they are.
Right. So what you're looking at now is the NFL guys getting involved in Europe, looking at the landscape and seeing opportunity. And they're going to these other owners and they're saying, you realize how much money you're leaving on the table? What do you mean? Okay, you have your venue and we keep seeing all these concerts at O2 Arena. Why? Well, because it's climate control. No. Why are you not having more events at your stadiums? Why are you not maximizing your revenue opportunities by doing this or this or this? Well, we never thought about doing it that way. Dude, we do this all the time in America and we make a bloody fortune. Stop being stupid.
Where did the NFL play some of their games in England this time around? Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yep.
And West Ham's barn.
Yep. So what you're seeing now is the Americanization of European sports, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because it's more revenue opportunities, more revenue drivers that allow teams to kind of buttress the financial load. Now, that works in England, where, as far as I know, most of the big boys own their stadiums. Italy's a problem because the cities own the stadiums, except for Allianz. So that's something that has to be worked out on Italy's end. But the Americanization of sports in Europe mean that they are finding new revenue opportunities that they previously had not considered or would not consider. And so the money's going to be very different going forward. It's going to be much more like numbers based, not just in player acquisition, but also the utilization of the full asset load, right? So everything from, if we have a brick, how do we monetize that brick? If we have, are we doing concessions at a certain level? Okay, well, let's try to look at how far we could push the envelope on raising prices for concessions. Are we doing parking? What the hell do you mean? We have a robust, beautiful transit system. Okay, but let's consider parking, and how we can maximize revenue there. There's no stone will be left unturned.
Do you put a hotel on your property?
Right.
Do you maximize your real estate?
Yes. And that's and the club that really before the Americanization started happening, that led the way on all of this was Real Madrid. I mean, Real Madrid led the way on how to make a dime off anything. Be mad at the Galacticos, be mad at everything else. But you know what? Financially, they're solid. Mm-hmm. They can buy whoever they want because they're rich enough to do it. And they're probably the only damn club that is not nation state owned that can compete at that level. And even they have been more peeled back than normal.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're talking about selling Vinicius, and I mean, good Lord.
Hey, yeah.
There was a time they would have been like, yep, we're going to keep Vinicius, and then we're going to go get this guy, and then we're going to go get this guy, and they may get back to it. But, they've been leading the charge for a minute.
Mm-hmm. And, so Tom, with the PSA, Tasty Cake apparently now makes lemon-flavored mini powdered donuts. Someone please come take this bag away before I eat the whole GD thing.
I'm not going to take the bag away, Tom. I'm not taking the bag away. You have to come to terms with that tasty cake bag.
Yes, and make sure that the rest of us know where these can be purchased so we can have.
Don't let me know. Don't let me know. I'm 5'5", man. I'm not 5'6". I'm not 5'7". I'm not 5'8". I am 5'5", and if I get a hold of a bag of tasty cake donuts, I'm gonna be 5'5" squared.
5'5" north and south, and 5'5" east and west.
Absolutely.
Let's see another couple of things on the World Theater before we bring in Niko here quickly. Let's see. It looks like Jenny Hermoso, Luis Rubiales is going to stand trial for kissing Jenny Hermoso on the lips. Thank the baby Jesus on that one. Judge investigating potential charges over Rubiales' kiss on Jenny Hermoso has recommended the case go to trial. National Court Judge Francisco de Jorge has also proposed trying Jorge Vilda, Ruben Rivera, the former marketing manager, and RFEF men's national team director Albert Luque. National Court has also ordered the judge to summon Montse Tomé, Vilda's successor, to stand as witness to determine whether Hermoso's exclusion in 2 matches was linked to her refusal to sign a joint statement with Rubiales regarding the incident at the World Cup. And we'll see where that goes. Former Tottenham owner Joe Lewis has pled guilty to securities fraud. The billionaire founder of the company who owns Spurs pleaded guilty in court. The 86-year-old British businessman was indicted in the U.S. in July for, quote, orchestrating a brazen insider trading scheme, end quote. This, according to U.S. officials, involved the passing of information to romantic partners and his private pilots. Lewis's lawyer had at the time of the indictment claimed the government had made an egregious error in judgment in charging him and promised to defend him vigorously in court. Lewis pleaded not guilty to all 16 counts on July 25. Bail set at $300 million, secured against his 98-meter super yacht and aircraft. However, Lewis appeared in court in Manhattan on Wednesday to plead guilty to 2 counts of securities fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Quote, I am so embarrassed and I apologize to the court for my conduct, Lewis told U.S. District Judge Jessica Clark via Reuters. The pilots were not subject to today's pleas and their criminal cases remain pending. Sentencing has been set for March. Stipulated guideline range of 18 to 24 months in prison. Judge will determine the final sentence. Lewis's bail conditions remain in place, and he retained the right to appeal any custodial sentence. Soon to be 87, Mr. Lewis, according to the representative, Mark Herr, is deeply sorry, embarrassed, and apologizes to the court and his family and all those who've come to rely on him. So that's just a piece of the news. By the way, it's 10:30-ish, kind of 10:30-ish. So that means we go to Seattle and check and see. I'm guessing cup of coffee number 2 because it is that time for Thursdays with Niko, and we bring in Niko Moreno. It is Niko, it is Nick, and it is John for the half hour here. I know you got a hard out in 27 minutes, so we won't dilly or dally, sir. Thanks for dropping by.
Thank you, guys. It's been a busy day in my neighborhood. It's always good to be on SDH. Hello, Nick, John, SDH family, ready to go, baby. There was a lot going on here in Seattle. There seems to be a new era and a certain air of triumphalism and some nuance in the city, at least in the soccer aspect. But yeah, man, let's do it.
All right. So you were at training camp and you noticed a dude wearing a sweatshirt, but it looked like the hood was over his head. And he was having conversations with folks, and you kind of had an idea who you thought it might be, and we're not talking Hook from AEW. You were right, and yesterday you had the big celebration and the contract signing, the man from Lanús. What is it with Seattle taking 10s from Lanús? That's Atlanta United territory, sir.
And we'll talk about that. And yes, I mean, it all started kind of Tuesday morning when, you know, it had been reported that the new Argentine was going to be in practice. And unfortunately for me, despite my efforts of getting the best picture of the young man in the white hoodie with the black hat over his head, I don't think the club wanted any pictures nice and early of this young man. So I respected that request, but as I always do, I kind of get in between, said hello, sounding Argentinian, clearly kind of took a look at his face, but, you know, didn't want to confirm anything that wasn't necessarily there to be confirmed. And then we got obviously the release from the Seattle Sounders that there was going to be a big announcement on the next day. But yes, it was a little bit that way. Now we know that that was Pedro de la Vega. The pictures of that particular moment are now out. He did the typical lineup of his friends where the teammates kind of hit you in the back of the head, where you kind of get across the tunnel and you get smacked around. He said hi to Steph, talked to Adrian for a long time. And then the next day, of course, there was the big presser that, as Craig Weibel called it, it was the worst kept secret in Seattle sports history. And it was. It really was. I thought it was funny that they didn't put Pedro's name on the podium until afterwards, which, I mean, we all know what we're there for. But it was interesting, man. I think that, yes, Lanús, apparently Seattle has a very good connection because, as you know, Seattle also had the rights to Miguel Almirón. They had a chance to bring him in, and ultimately they ended up deciding to go for Niko Latodero at that particular moment in time, and that all played great. Now there's a second coming of that particular 10. And you know what really blew my mind yesterday, and we'll get to the press conference in a second, is that as I spoke to Jeremiah O'Shan of Sounder Heart, and a guy that I work with quite often, you know, there was a lot of hype when Miguel Almirón was going to come to MLS. And I remember that was rightful and earned hype. And then looking at Pepo's stats with Lanús, not only did he play more minutes, but he had more goals, had more assists, was just more effective. And maybe it's because I was looking more on video and chatting with people around Argentina, because I don't like to just base a player on stats. But it was interesting to see that, I mean, Pepo, he had a fantastic time at Lanús. You saw Lanús do this amazing tribute to him as well. That video is on Lanús's social media, as I recommend you guys go watch it, where he's walking the dorms of when he was a younger player and when he was a ball boy, and he walks around the facility, then all his goals. I mean, it really talks a lot about the player that you're getting and the impact he had at Lanús. So that's kind of the Lanús 10 Seattle conversation into a little nutshell.
Nick, go for it. I think I've stunned Nick. Nick, what's on your mind?
Well, my computer is deciding that now's the time that it's going to, just creep.
It's going to update.
It's like you click the button and the computer's like, wait for it. Wait for it. Okay, now. All right. So look, you guys are, bringing in some good players. You got some, good hype coming on. Look, when there's a lot of excitement right now, Niko, up in Sounderland, but the question is as you look across the West right now, what are you seeing? Is there a vibe right now in Seattle that, hey, you know what, maybe we can start owning the West again? Is that something that you guys are kicking around with this new transfer brought in, or is it still like, hey, look, we're going to kind of guard ourselves a bit, excited but guarded? Is it the guarded excitement, or is it, nah, baby, we're steamrolling, we're all gas, no brakes?
I think they're steamrolling. I think, like I said, there's a sense of triumphalism with this guy. I mean, perhaps is the fact that he just, I don't know how you call it, just his aura, his character, he kind of just like, smoothing all the questions. He had all the right answers in the presser. Me, myself, I was able to talk for all in all throughout, from the presser all the way down to the end of the day, for about 2.5 hours with Craig Weibel about this kid. And I'll probably promote that later on, but we had a conversation, Jeremiah, Craig, and myself, for a podcast that Sandra Hart has. And man, it's hard to not get excited. And fans are already getting excited simply off of the confidence that the club through Brian, through Craig, are projecting, and giving him that number 10 really sets the bar high. That to me says you're going to be the man right here. Both Craig and Brian were asked about what does success look like this year. I thought that was a very good question. And, they talked about results, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to get wins. And this guy's coming in, but he's a good player, but he's going to have to kind of prove it on the field. Brian threw a 10 and 10 stat there, 10 goals, 10 assists. That's pretty good, right, for a first-year player. But I think around the area, there's even a higher expectation. I put out a poll about, is he going to be a newcomer of the year candidate? And I've yet to see a no on the voting. I mean, everybody just seems very excited about what this guy can do. But when I look at the West, and as I said last week, I'm not impressed. I think that not right now, not as of January 25th. Like there is no team in the West right now that I can honestly say, okay, well, that's absolutely going to be the team to watch for, right? Because LAFC has questions. LAG, we don't even need to bring them up. San Jose, we don't know what they're really doing. Austin has like 15 players in their roster. Portland, under new management and a manager that I don't have a lot of, confidence in doing what his predecessor did. St. Louis, guys are leaving. We don't really know if they're going to be able to replicate what they did last year. So with all that said, I think that, yeah, Seattle absolutely right now are in the conversation to be one of the top players in the West. And I also think that the team, and perhaps this gets lost sometimes with every news and new signing that we see in the league, they still have some pretty good players, right? Yemar Gomez-Andrade, one of the best defenders in the league. Stefan Frey's been good for a long time. You still have a very young and core group of midfielders with the likes of also an MVP finalist in Joe Paulo, who looks great these days. There's still that potential that Raul Ruidiaz is going to be that guy that was a couple of years ago. So if everything goes Seattle's way, this could be a really good team, not to mention what could come in the summer for them.
No doubt. And right now, this seems like a win or now approach, because looking at the contract statuses, you got a lot of dudes on contracts that end this calendar year. Rusnak, Ruidiaz, JP, Arriaga, Nathan, Yamar, Leo Chu, Rothrock, Jackson Reagan, who's injured, Dylan Tevis, who's injured, Jacob Castro, Andrew Thomas, Bradilio Rodriguez, Kitahara, John Bell, Reed Baker Whiting, all contracts that end this year. You've got like a dozen guys outside of that whose contracts don't. This seems like you're pushing a lot of chips to the center of the table here for this season.
Yeah, and that's wow, beautifully put. That's great. That's something that we did talk about yesterday, and it did come up, and he still does not give me enough of what I was looking for. But I've asked Craig a couple of times. You get criticized quite often, but this is kind of like the first year where there's some cap freedom, there's some contract freedom from you to do whatever it is that you do, right? Because you were leaving off of what Garth had done contract-wise, the big DPs, all of these things. He mentioned that he had a lot to do with bringing in a guy like Albert and things, but this is really his year, right? So with all those contracts up, all of these players are going to be proven that they either deserve an extension, a new contract, or they're going to go bye-bye, including guys like Raul, right? And that's probably the main guy that he's going to be coming into the season and said, hey, I need another big payday, and the only way I'm doing that is if I'm scoring 15 goals this season. So all that competition in every single position, plus the contract conversation, I think does give Seattle a little bit of an extra push. And man, I'm hearing myself talk compared to last week where I was very pessimistic or realistic, as I like to call myself. And maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid myself. I'm trying to comprehend what I'm saying right now, but I think it is. There are other aspects. I'm a true believer on intangibles, and everything you just mentioned is there. Now, there's also a lot of things that could happen. I mean, you heard me talk about this midfield. Maybe guys can go. Maybe you sell some guys. You open up space. I mean, look, Joshua Tensley just got his first start with the U.S. men's national team. You have a guy like Danny Leyva that's really good. You got Obed Vargas that's been in the conversation with teams being interested in him all around. You still got JP. There's a possibility that you can drop Albert into that central midfield. There's possibilities that you drop Christian into that central midfield. So there is just a lot of competition, a lot of things that you can do. We've talked about the center backs with Javier Arriaga, with Nathan. There's a lot of competition there. So I think Seattle has a lot going for themselves right now. Is there room for improvement? Yes. And Craig said that yesterday. There's only 2 strikers in this roster. He says he feels comfortable because it's 2 big names at striker, but you could tell that he'd be okay with obviously adding some depth there. We still have to kind of figure out what's going to happen with a little bit of the wingers. Who's going to be there? Who's going to be where? Is Leo Chu for sure going to be your bench player now, or is he going to be able to compete? Competition is good, but at the end of the day, I think Pedro de la Vega, with all the hype, with the number 10, with the money you're paying him, he probably has the inside track on getting a starting position, no matter where it is, whether it's left wing, right wing, at cam, but he's probably going to get a starting position.
He's been in all those shots. Niko, 4Card says that you are drunk off the PDV aura.
That's well put. That's well put. You got me on that one. Maybe it is, man. Maybe it is. I got to say, maybe I spent too much time yesterday in Long Acres, because I definitely did. Without a doubt, it was definitely a long morning to noon at Long Acres, but I think you guys are right. I mean, I feel it, and it wasn't until I kind of heard myself talking. Maybe when I see the video later, I'm going to be like, man, I should have probably calmed myself a little bit. But I just think that there is definitely in a scenario and potential for this team to be really good. Now, that could all come crashing down if reality hits. And, I've talked about the learning curve to MLS. I've talked about, certain positions that, you can still kind of figure out. And is there going to be a formation change? What are the wrinkles that Brian's talking about? So, yeah, maybe reality hits. But right now, I'm definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. I'll admit that.
Well, no, there's nothing wrong with that, though. There's nothing. This is the time of year when, if there's even the slightest bit of hope, you gotta with both hands, man. You gotta hold fast, grab a hold of that hope and hold fast. There's nothing wrong with drinking the Kool-Aid this time of year, Niko.
Yeah, no, man, I agree. And again, another thing that Craig mentioned yesterday was the fact that, look, he heard all season that this team wasn't good enough. He heard all season that he didn't know how to do his job because he couldn't get anybody, even though he explained several times that there was no cap to do absolutely anything with. And this team still got pretty far, and this team could have won that game against LAFC, and they probably should have. I mean, they created a lot of opportunities. They were there, just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. It was a great goalkeeping performance, as Craig put it, and that's true. I mean, they got very far. They were top of the West. So is it ludicrous for me to sit here and tell you that they're going to be a top 3 team in the Western Conference? No, I don't think so. You're right. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
Hey, man, I'm fully supportive of hope and all that. And yes, Alex brings up an excellent point. Guys, there is literally something wrong with drinking the Kool-Aid. Yes, there is. Yes. Jonestown was real.
Yes, that's why we don't reference those kinds of things or mention that gentleman in his first name. All right, so Western Conference. And we had 2 other teams that we were talking about that are raising the collective soccer down here eyebrow, and we're scratching our heads. But actually, tell you what, let me bookmark LAFC and Minnesota for a second. The Jesus Ferreira almost transfer, $13 million. I mean, and literally, you read, and I read the article as it was put out by Tom Bogert. FC Dallas, and Jesus Ferreira had agreed to a $13 million sale price for the striker. And you're sitting there, you read that, you're like, cool, fantastic. Second sentence involves Spartak Moscow. And the league steps in at the last second and goes like, bruh, what are you thinking? Literally, and like I said, I know that the league doesn't sit there on a daily basis and put their arm around the shoulder of whomever, but how do you in this day and age deal with a Russian Premier League side knowing what's going on this planet? How does it get to this point?
I think, unfortunately, sometimes, cream, cash runs everything around me, right? And you kind of see that amount of money and you get lost within it. I understand where that type of headline and the way it's presented could give some bad press and reference to MLS, because everybody's thinking, oh, that's what's wrong with MLS is salary cap and the fact that all the owners are all together and that the league makes decisions and the league brought Messi and everybody had to be okay. And now they're rejecting a bid that could have put this guy in Europe. But at the end of the day, it's about what you said. I mean, you got to look beyond the money. You got to look beyond where this kid is going and the potential of his growth as a player and what could potentially put him elsewhere, rather than having like a Fabian Castillo effect where you put him in the Turkish league where he didn't do well and everything surrounding him and the atmosphere and the everyday living just kind of handicap his career. So
Castillo may not come home. I mean, literally, he could be stuck there. Never coming home. Yeah. What are you thinking, FC Dallas?
No, it's Absolutely. Not FC Dallas. It's not FC Dallas, though. Like, that's the thing is that I a club. Here's the thing. People get stuck in routine. And they say, okay, there's a transfer. This is how we handle the transfer. We're going to go by the book. Check box 1, check box 2, check box 3. You don't factor in variables that, like, oh my God, I didn't even think of a potential European conflict. That hadn't even entered my mind. Or, oh yeah, that is a totalitarian regime. Who would have thought? You just see, like, we're going to check the boxes. We're just checking boxes. And it sounds to me like some lawyer at MLS headquarters was like, hey guys, this, I don't think we're allowed to do this. And then they put the brakes on it, Like,
I wonder if it would have been different if it was Dynamo Kiev that sent the offer. I mean, it's like,
but you're still dealing with Russia right now in a global conflict.
But people don't.
I know. I agree 100%.
Yeah, most people in their jobs, they shut off part of their brain and they just check the boxes. Okay, all right, check box 1, check box 2, check box 3. Okay, all right. The player gave the okay. Yep, player gave the okay. Vaya con Dios, bro. I mean, so so I don't know what to tell you. But and then somebody comes in and goes, I don't think this is going to work. And how would we be received if we did this?
Won't.
But so this is very different, man. I'm just saying that it's a different world, and sometimes people have to have checks and balances in place, and that's why we have lawyers.
Yeah, and if we go to the soccer part, I mean, quite honestly, Dallas doesn't have enough to not be without Jesus Ferreira at this point anyways. I don't really know what a replacement would look like for that team right now. So aside from the head explosion on the more important things, that's life and everything that goes around it in our current worldwide situation. But in the soccer aspect, I mean, Dallas is the head scratcher, period, in terms of a roster, in terms of where they're going, what they're attempting to do. So, man, just poor Dallas.
No doubt. Nick, what else is on your mind? 5 more minutes with Niko.
Niko, I may be making my way to the Pacific Northwest in March, so I'll have to get in touch with you, and we can sit down and share a brew and talk about all things soccer in America.
Oh, man, absolutely, man. Please let me know when you are. I love to host my guys from Atlanta. Last time I only got to say hi, but I would love to just sit down, have a beer, hang out a little bit, maybe go down to Pike Place, get some pierogies or something. But yeah, man, I'm more than happy to host you here in Seattle. I think it's going to be a fun season, and yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, absolutely, let's do it.
All right, LAFC. Let's get into LAFC here for a second. I think they only have like 8 dudes on their roster right now. We're a month away from the season, and you mentioned teams that are at a bit of a disadvantage with numbers. LAFC, Steve Buke is out the door. Looks like he's heading to Real Valladolid. Looks like they're wiping out 2 other contracts. You add Hugo Lloris to the mix, you've got 18 dudes right now. Denny Bouanga, once out, that would be a big dude to lose. What in the wide world of sports is going on down there at LAFC? I understand why you ain't worried about him right now, but what in the wide world of sports is going on down there at BMO?
I just think that there's a high level of overconfidence, and that overconfidence has not resulted in necessarily negative results and terrible seasons, because although not as in your face, when Chicho Arango left and there were movements made to a team that had reached the final, you kind of scratch your head and you're like, okay, what are we doing here? Why are we bringing 60-year-old center back or whatever? I mean, there were things that you were scratching your head about. So I think now, with the arrival of Lloris for that amount that he did, there's got to be other moves already in line with what they are trying to get. I really think that Dennis Bouanga's more of I don't want to call it a tantrum, but just a business decision to create some mayhem so you can get more money. That's literally it. You guys heard me say here, and it came true. There's not enough European teams ready to pay what Dennis Bouanga believes he could get paid, or what LAFC would consider even letting a guy that just did what he did last season for. There's just not that many European teams that are willing to take that risk on a guy like Bouanga. No disrespect to him, but it's just kind of the way things work out. So because of that, I have no doubt, and I'm confident that he'll be with LAFC, and that LAFC will probably have to come out of pocket and say, hey, yeah, I get what you're trying to do here, but calm down, score more goals. You're kind of the it guy for us, and then they'll kind of build around. But there are a lot of question marks about Carlos Vela, what's going to happen with the 9, how you're going to replace Palacios, who was huge for this team. I think you need someone to either replace or be there on the spot for Ilie Sanchez. I thought he looked in one leg at times last season. So there's just a lot happening there. But again, when you have that reach, when you have that group, and you feel like, hey, I could just write a check and go get the guys that I want, maybe there's not that sense of urgency. But to the common people around the soccer world, you start thinking, well, maybe you should have a team already ready to go into the season. But I think that's what it is. It's confidence in what they do, confidence in Torrington, confidence in the fact that they have all the shiny lights around this club that at any point can bring a guy like Lloris or whoever from Europe. And that's probably why they have more urgency to bring guys in.
All right, what's going on? I know we were up against it with you, and you got stuff to do out there on the West Coast. What's going on in the universe of Niko these days?
Yes, sir. So a big one here before I go. We have a podcast dropping already. It should be a Sounder Out Hard conversation with Jeremiah O'Shea, myself, and Craig Weibel. Man, it was amazing. It was good. We could have probably talked another 2 hours, but we talk all things Pedro La Vega. We talk about the new philosophy within the Sounders. I mean, the pressure on Craig. I mean, that's a real good one. So go ahead and check that out. We have Soccer Bar here in about an hour, unless I'm unable to be there because I have a very busy schedule today. But please go ahead and check that out. And in Pulso Sports, of course, we got the entire Pepo conference. We have a conversation outside of that first press conference with Craig Weibel and Brian Smetzer. So go ahead and check out Pulso Sports, guys.
And it sounds like the boss needs to be taken outside for a bit of a pit stop before you do anything, because I heard that in the background, my friend.
Yes, he's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take him out. Really appreciate you guys. Good times, man. So, and I'll be waiting for you, Nick, and John. Hopefully one day I'll get to see you out here. I got to make the trip down there, but it's tough when you got a lot of things going on here in the Northwest. But have a good one, guys. I'll see you.
Be good.
Later.
That is Niko. Niko's out the door. He's got a busy day. He has to make sure that the boss goes 10-100 before he even leaves the house.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to get that done. Let's see. Any other odds and ends really quickly? UEFA chief Zvonimir Boban has resigned as chief in protest of UEFA over Seferin's plan to extend his presidency. Former AC Milan and Croatia, the Croatia star has quit as UEFA's chief of football in protest over a controversial plan to let the governing body president Alexander Seferin extend his reign to 2031. First elected as president in 2016. Three-term limit was one of the things that he brought in as one of his changes when Seferin wanted to be the head. But now it was confirmed at a meeting of the executive committee in Hamburg last month. Seferin now believes any terms started before 2017 should not count towards the limit, the change that would enable him to continue until 2031. Not a lot of fans. UEFA Treasurer David Gill voiced his concern during the meeting that the change would not be within the spirit of the rules. The former Man U chief exec is not considering his position. Boban has decided, I'm out the door. So Boban is not happy with Seferin. So Boban finished his statement by saying it would go against all the principles and values he stands for if he tacitly backs the amendment to the rules, and adds he thinks he's not trying to be some sort of hero, especially as I am not alone in my thinking here. So Boban out, Seferin looking to hang in his position until 2031. And we will see what happens there. If you have not read it, there is a bit of a deep dive into everything going on right now in Ghanaian national team stuff. Chris Hughton was fired after they didn't make it out of the group stage at AFCON, which continues to be just crazy, stupid nuts. And you can watch that on any possible platform attached to our friends at Fanatis on the BNs, and it's there, and you can catch up with that. FC Dallas has re-signed defender Amit Korsha. Colorado Rapids have signed and loaned out Remy Cabral. We talked about Carlos Harvey, and we briefly mentioned center back Lorenzo Della Valle, signed by LAFC. Niko Joaquini to Como, 1907. From all caps. That happened yesterday as well. Nick, let me go through what to watch and where to watch it before we go through final thoughts. And then we'll go after it on a Friday, and we'll get you ready for the weekend and talk about Birmingham, talk about Atlanta, talk about expectations, all those kinds of things. Group play ends in the Asian Cup this morning. Turkish Super League, Galatasaray and Istanbulspor is at noon, a simulcast on Bein Espanol. Once again, fanatisfntz.co/soccer down here. Fox Deportes Mexican Liga MX Femenil, doubleheader at 8 and 10 on Fox Deportes. DAZN USA, doubleheader in Women's Champions League, doubleheader at 12:45, doubleheader at 3 o'clock. On the Plus, Belgian Cup at 2:30 involving Anderlecht, fourth round of the FA Cup at 2:45, Bournemouth and Swansea. Copa del Rey quarters, Atletico Madrid and Sevilla at 3. Paramount, you missed Jordan, Bahrain, South Korea, and Malaysia, but Kyrgyzstan, Oman, and Saudi Arabia and Thailand are in the second half, and you can catch those once we go off the air. Nick, final thoughts on a Thursday?
Well, my final thought is basically if you are excited and happy about the season that's coming up for your team, understand that it's perfectly okay. Don't let anyone bring you down because you're allowed to be excited, okay? There will be plenty of time to be brought back down to earth. There's plenty of time for that to happen. Now is not that time. You be excited, damn it. If you want to be happy and out there, you be happy and out there, man.
Reminder, 7 o'clock tonight, Top Golf, Northwest Atlanta, off the Chattahoochee and off the Chattahoochee Industrial. It is the fundraiser for the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation. Be there, play, make fun of others, make fun of me, Jarrett, and everybody else. 92.9 The Game will be there. Jason will be there. A handful of you guys will be there. If you're thinking about coming, show up, because once again, teams might be a loose construct. You never know who you might get paired with. You know who you might get to heckle when you're there. But it's a fantastic cause. 92.9 The Game will be live from there tonight, and it will be really cool to see everybody out there. Remember, it is covered, so if you bring yourself, you won't have to worry about getting wet, except going from the parking lot to the car. Reminder once again, the Marshall Islands scarves, keep an eye on the Marshall Islands Soccer Federation website, but they will be $32 plus shipping and handling, unless it's local, and the Abstermobile will take care of all of that, helping out our friends from the Marshall Islands Soccer Federation as they try to do stuff, and a lot of stuff here in 2024, especially up in the Four Corners in October. So, Nick, I believe that is it. So send us home.
Until next time, everybody, please know that we are so grateful for all of your involvement with the SDH universe, and know that we are very, very appreciative. We love you. We'll talk to you again very, very soon. Until next time, everyone, mucha Euro, y'all.
Play it safe, everybody. Mucha plata. End of the show. That means we get to do this.